Welcome back to the Mastering Runeterra podcast with Jay and Bay, the #1 source for competitive Legends of Runeterra news and information. If you're looking for the best decks to play right now, be sure to check us out on Twitter at Master Runeterra or in our Discord. And if you want to take the next step in leveling up your game, check out our Runeterra team on Patreon, where we do weekly learning calls and one-on-one coaching. Now strap in and grab yourself some Boro snacks, because we are about to start Mastering Runeterra.
Welcome back to the Mastering Runeterra podcast with Jason and Bay's fill-in Aikado. Bay is off playing more Flesh and Blood, which apparently he thinks is like really fun or something. I don't really get it. It's not Runeterra, so traitor. Anyways, so first off though, we've fantastic show for you, of course. And before we get into everything though, we have to thank our patrons. Thank you so much for everyone that supports us on Patreon. We couldn't do what we do without you guys, your support. It really means the world to us. And of course, we have to thank our sister podcast, Runeterra Radio, Saucy and Blevins. Love you guys. If you want more awesome Runeterra content, go check them out. Runeterra Radio, YouTube, iTunes, Spotify, all the usual places. And with that said, actually one thing here, we just, real quick, from our sponsor, this show is brought to you by masteringruneterra.com, the #1 source for Runeterra strategy on the internet. Seems optimistic, but with that said, Aikado, how are you?
I'm doing well, man. Glad to be here. Appreciate you having me. Even if it is, in place of Bay going off and playing other games, glad to still be here.
I mean, to be real, I told him you were coming on the show this week, and he got upset and went to Miami, as one does.
Understandable.
Yeah, I think our cover was blown. People saw right through that. Welcome, of course. For anyone that doesn't know, you've recently joined us on the Mastering Runeterra Pro team. We are lucky to have you, as you are a very accomplished. What do we even call ourselves as Runeterra? Are we casters? Are we magicians? What are we?
God,
we're just players.
Players? I couldn't tell you.
I'd
have to come up with something. Is there?
I don't know if that's
like
the thing
the lore?
Because we joke about that all the time as Magic players. We're like, you are a talented wizard. You are a very powerful planeswalker. Like, we're always joking about that stuff. You can't really do it with Runeterra. Speaking of your accomplishments, though, top 8 worlds, which we'll get to. I don't really know that much though about like when you got into Runeterra or what your journey's been like, or if you played a lot of card games in the past. So maybe fill us in a little bit on like your history and your background.
So as far as like card games before, I played like a little bit of Yu-Gi-Oh when I was a kid with like my brothers, but we didn't actually know how to play the game. In college I played like a little bit of Magic, but nothing, anything resembling a competitive level, right? So LOR is really the first card game that I've really, gotten into or played at, anything down high level, right? Before this, I had played a lot of other games before, right? Like I've been diamond in pretty much every single Riot game out there. But yeah, LOR, I started playing in like February when Aphelios came out. I hit Masters within a couple weeks. I abused the hell out of TFs. I missed TFs. But yeah, that's where I started. Didn't really have a much of a basis, so it's all been learning from a lot of content creators. Honestly, it's sort of been my step up, right? Is just learning from a lot of other people, which has been awesome in the LOR community, right? People are so willing to help out.
Yeah. Man, our community is fantastic. When I first made the move over, I just started streaming it, sort of just be like, oh, what is this? I'll check it out. And Nick Makes Plays came and like hung out in my stream and like taught me basically like in my stream and stuff. And that's how I got into it. Shout out Nick Makes Plays. Fantastic human. Yeah, I totally agree. We're lucky that we have such a great community. There's a lot of really good content out there. A lot of people putting out like a lot of like really high level stuff. That's so impressive. So you started in February, which is wild. That's like what, 9 months ago?
Yeah, it's coming up on 9 months. Yeah.
Yeah, not even a full year yet. And what have your what were your seasonal tournaments like leading up to Worlds, and how do Worlds go?
So I started like right before the seasonals that Majin won, right? So
Okay,
like
yeah.
I hit Masters or something, and then I was watching the seasonals, and I'm like, oh, this Majin Bay guy is kind of cool. I watched him, sweep through with the TF Fizz, the play to like counterfeit copy his rummages, to flip TF. That shit was so exciting.
So
Um, so that's really what got me to be like, okay, maybe this is a game that I can play at a competitive level, right? So then I started tryharding after that. I've qualified for every seasonal since then. As far as like performance, I think I got like 4 wins on my first one. Maybe like a couple wins on the next ones. Really nothing to write home about until 2 seasonals ago. I had started doing really well in community tournaments right before that. Yeah, I've been playing community tournaments the whole time, but for the most part, I've just you go in, you get your ass kicked for a few rounds by like really good players, and then you just try and scrounge any knowledge that you can from it. Like, I guess I shouldn't play like that anymore. Um, Eventually, I
yeah.
started topping a couple tournaments. I topped like an OLS. I topped one of Squeeby's tournaments. And then I ended up topping seasonals. We ended up going 8-1. The only game I lost in the open rounds was against Kevwar, because I timed out setting up my blocks. I ended up giving up Lee Sin for free. It pissed me off.
Oh
But we ended up
no.
going 8-1, made it to the top cut, which is just incredible. And then from there, I was like, okay, well, this is the first seasonals I've done well in. If I'm going to try and qualify for Worlds, which was like kind of the far off goal this entire time, the goal that's never actually attainable. It's like, I guess I could qualify for Worlds if I just top this seasonals and I top for it. And then suddenly I ended up top 2 and I qualified for Worlds. It was kind of crazy. It's definitely like a massive um upward climb because I was so used to not doing all that well. And then suddenly I started spiking tournaments. It's kind of crazy.
Yeah. What do you think changed? What changed in your game that made you go from like, not making top cut to making top cut to like actually like going to the finals or winning?
I think a big thing, like one of the big things that made like the final step for me, there's a million things you learn along the way, like learning how to pass, learning to play specific matchups, play specific decks. I think I started playing like good decks.
Yeah.
Before this, I was, a big What Am I fan. So I'm like, oh, triple Targon every single time. And then Targon got nerfed, and that was what set me free. Suddenly, I wasn't, just scrubbing out with Targon. I started playing real decks. I learned like Draven Ezreal. I just like leaned into comfort, and that was really the big thing for me. Is just bringing comfort decks, bringing decks that were pretty good, but weren't like the number ones, and just decks that I'm more comfortable than other people on. And that really made a huge difference for me. It's really where I started to improve a lot. Instead of just trying to chase whatever the new big deck was. Just play the standard decks that are pretty good, and just be better than other people, not them.
Y- Yeah, totally. It's funny that you bring that up about what am I? I never went for the triple Targon, and I always wanted to, and I was like, was I missing out? Did I miss out on that? But hearing that you did go so good for you makes me feel like a little bit better than I did
Yeah,
when
I
I
was like
stayed.
super excited one season. So I'm like, okay, I can bring Zoe Vi and like Thresh Aesol and like TLC. And this is so good. And then I went in there and I'm like, I can't play any of these fucking decks. This is so bad.
Yeah, something I've learned many times. I've been playing Magic for I don't even know, like over 20 years now. Yeah, crazy, like 22 years or something. Um, there was a certain point of time. So very early on, I learned that like good players played blue decks. And for anyone who doesn't know, like blue is like the tricky color. Like the controlling color. Um, and so I always try to play blue decks. I try to play control decks all the time. And like somewhere along the way, I started playing like just whatever the best deck was, or whatever the best aggro deck was, or whatever the best mid range deck was, even. And
Mhm.
I had fantastic results. And I was crushing and crushing. Like I would literally just like I would top 8 like every big tournament, eventually win some. And then again, somewhere along the way, I thought that I was too good. I was so good, and I went back to playing control decks, and again had like so results. And just recently, like I stopped playing Magic for like 10 months, and I picked up a mono green deck, which is like I don't know, like a Pirates deck or something. An Overwhelm deck is a good example.
Mhm.
And it's the best deck in the format. I just easily 6-0'd a tournament in a format I had never played before with a deck I had never played before. Um, and I once again quickly I fell into the trap, and I was like, I think I brought it to the next tournament and did okay, did well. But the next two tournaments, I brought like rogue decks that I
Mhm.
thought would like have some sort of edge and that were much more difficult to play. And I just bombed out of both. And I was like, who do I think I am? Why do I keep thinking that I can just show up and just play these like complex rogue strategies that you really need to know, the inside and out of the deck and of the matchup, and just be like, it'll be fine. It'll be
Mhm.
fine. Like and so I've realized this in Runeterra as well, where like I didn't play aggro decks. Like, no, that's for the Moes of the world. I play like good decks. I need like
Yeah.
Aphelios and I need Zoe and then it turns out like last seasonals I did almost zero preparation and I just picked up like Ziggs Poppy, Draven Scion and
TF gameplay.
Ping City. And I was like two win-ins away from top 32ing with like almost no preparation whatsoever, just letting the decks just like carry me. Um and yeah, and again, I'm like, why do I just keep trying? Like, I have to win. I have to be like, I want to be like Bay. I want to win with Zoe's, and I want to win with Lee Sin's, and I want to win with like Darkness. And sometimes there are some decks like TLC, for instance, like it's like a different type of control. The Freljord Shadow Isles decks, I love. I feel like I'm good at playing them. I really enjoy playing them. I have a lot of success. Bay hates them. Bay doesn't play them. And so I it just refreshed all this in my memory that like one, just play the good decks. Sometimes just that was another thing in Magic that I wouldn't play the best deck. Like people are gunning for it. I wanted to be like the rogue guy. And like a lot of times the best deck is the best deck for a reason. And it's just like the raw strength of it will carry you. TF Fizz, for instance, Aphelios,
Yeah.
lots of decks, right? Um, so that's one, just play the best deck. And two, like really like it be less, I don't know what it is, but play don't just play decks because they're like more complex or they like give you more options. That is not always a good thing.
Yeah.
What kind of decks do you prefer to play? What are your like
I
go
think
tos?
sometimes when you're approaching like building a lineup, sometimes simpler is just a little bit better, you know? A lot of times I've tried to play like Lisa and Zoe. The seasonals I topped, like I topped with Lisa and Zoe. Um, but it got banned like 8 times, and I was fucking glad it got banned like 8 times. So like sometimes just simpler is better, and like don't if a deck just doesn't vibe with you, just don't go out of your way for it. As far as like decks I like, mid range. I love mid range.
Yeah,
Like Draven Ezreal. I love Shen Jarvan. Shen Jarvan's kind of dog shit. So is Draven Ezreal right now. But like
but
I
they were
love
good.
those
They
decks
were like they were real good for a while.
for sure. For sure. Um, like fair mid range decks. Ash LeBlanc. I like Ash LeBlanc a lot. I think it's really bad, but when it is good, I love to play it. Um, because they're definitely the decks I kind of like lean towards right now. I'm super into Sivir Akshan, which it's about the most mid range fairish deck in the game. And it's actually pretty good. But yeah, no, definitely stuff like that is what I lean towards. I played a lot of aggro when I was first learning the game. Like after TFS got nerfed, I played a lot of spiders. I played discard. Um, just because I felt like it was the easiest way to grind ladder. So I can always fall back into like Poppy Zigs or something. But yeah, it's funny that you're talking about like you want to play like the best decks because sometimes that's just the best way to be. Just play three really good decks, just because it's going to give you the edge, and sometimes they'll just carry you. Whereas I hate playing the three best decks because I
Oh,
hate
I didn't
playing
like it.
mirrors in this game. I fucking hate mirrors more than anything. Like the Scion mirror, oh my god, please no. I don't
Yeah,
want to touch it.
that mirror I definitely don't like. I enjoy playing mirror. Well, um, yeah, so Bay loves Majin Bay loves doing that, right? That's his thing. He wants to play mirrors and beat people. And the
Mhm.
times when I realized that was our we had a lineup, and I didn't realize that was our strategy. I was like, I feel like maybe I should have played something else because the thing is, I like playing mirrors when I am prepared. So like if I'm
Mhm.
gonna play Ziggs Poppy or Ping City, like I'll play those mirrors all day. I understand those decks really well. I feel really comfortable playing those mirrors. But like Draven Scion, I have not played a lot of the old version or the new version nearly as
Yeah.
much to feel like I have some sort of edge basically. And I would hate to play that mirror. Um, are there some mirrors that you like playing? Because I feel like I was like thinking about this
Like,
now. I never really thought about it too much, but
I
basically,
think
if I
like
feel confident with the deck, then I don't mind playing the mirror.
I think that sometimes there have been like some mirrors I'm okay with. Like Draven Ezreal was like kind of a fun mirror. except for when it came down to like, oh, they drew Draven and double Tribeam in their opening hand, so I guess I just fucking lose.
Yeah, those suck.
I Silver Auction mirrors like fine. Especially since right now a lot of people aren't teched for it. So you put in like one riposte and suddenly you're doing okay. Or a couple concerteds. Um, other than that, I just fucking hate mirrors in this game. So a lot of times I don't go for like the best decks. I go for like slightly, just like the next set down, it's like the next set over. I
Do you
didn't
try
want
to
to play like
hedge? Do you try to hedge
kind of.
into the best decks?
Kind of. So, like, the Thresh Nasus meta, I fucking hated the Thresh Nasus mirror
Oh,
because,
bro,
like,
loved it.
it
It's
was
so
just
easy.
like it was like 2 Threshes just, like, staring at each other for, like, 6 turns. It was so fucking
Oh,
stupid.
dude, that
I
was the
just
last time
hated
I was
that.
actually good at the game.
But, I despise the mirror, so, like, I was like, "Okay, well, I just need to come out and beat Nasus." Did it work for me? No, it did not work for me. But that's usually my approach is that I don't wanna be playing the best decks just because I don't wanna be playing those mirrors at all. If I had to
Yeah.
play 'em, like, 7 rounds in a row, it would not work for me.
Interesting. That makes me feel good because, like I said, Majin's all about that, and I'm always kind of like, I don't know about this. So I like vary on it. Definitely the times that he's loved it, I've loved it a lot less.
Mhm.
So with that in mind, what did you end up bringing to the open rounds of Worlds? For anyone that doesn't know, Worlds, the top like 64 players of each shard went into a playoff, and the top four from each shard went to the top 16 playoff, more or less. So to begin with, you were in a pool of 64, like just basically the best of the best players on the planet. Take that, EU. Um, and then you had to make it to the top four. Were you one of the people that went 4-0, or did you have to go through the losers bracket? So there's
I
double
did
elimination.
I did end up going 4-0, which thank God. Like, what Majin had to do where he lost in the first round and then had to go, like, 7-0 afterwards,
Insane.
ridiculous.
Insane.
Um, I ended up bringing Draven Ezreal, Poppy Lulu, and Zoe Nami. And the big thing was that I was just out there to beat other people's Zoe Namis. Like, Draven Ezreal is very good at it, and then Poppy Lulu, I think just, like, hard not Poppy. Poppy wasn't out. Was it Poppy? Yeah, it was Poppy Lulu. She came out, like, right before that. Sorry.
Yeah, she came out with Nami, I guess, right? No.
Yeah, yeah. So I was just out there to crush other people's Nami decks. A lot of other people were on like Draven Caitlyn, but I just fucking hated that deck because it didn't actually end games. It just like tried to play hyper control and had to like control the board forever. It had 0 over the top. At that point people weren't teching in like variants or anything. They were just like, on Alan's like sump fumes list. So I had Draven Ezreal. I had a little bit more over the top, and then I just ended up 4-0ing, just beating a lot of Nami players, honestly.
Nice. Yeah, so that's like a good example of you reading the meta and attacking it like a little bit from the side. At least like soft targeting like Nami decks.
Yeah.
And then you made it to the top 16. And so for anyone who doesn't know, again, the top 16 was divided into 4 groups of 4, with everyone playing a round robin against the other 3 players, and the top 2 from each pod moving into the top 8, which I thought was a really cool like format. At first, when I saw it, I was kind of like, I don't know, what is this? This is strange. But as a viewer, it was fantastic. It was really good. I'm curious what it was like for you playing in it.
I mean, the groups were super hype, right? Like each group had its own day. So you get to follow it throughout the day. You get to follow the standings. Everyone's, playing each other. It would have been cool if there was like a double round robin or something, but as it was super hype, right? I had some like really good players. I had Ping Ping Ho, who's like apparently one of the best Asian players. I like How to Die, who's apparently pretty good. And then Cosimo, who's also really good in EU. So I was kind of worried going in. I ended up running back my lineup, which I probably shouldn't have. But I ended up running it back in the top 16 and looking at like every single lineup that I was against. I don't think there was a single favorable matchup for me at all. So
Yeah.
I was crossing my fingers going in.
What was, again, for anyone that doesn't know, it was 2 weeks between the open rounds and the top 8. Is that right? I believe it
It
was.
was, it might have been. It,
I'm
it
pretty,
was it
I'm
was like 10
pretty
days or
sure.
something. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it went like
Because it started
weekend,
on like a Thursday or
nothing,
some shit, right?
weekend. Oh, also true. Um, did you prepare a lot in that time? Like Bay, for instance, had to go to Disneyland. He ended up not having a lot of time to prepare.
So it was kind of hard because I did a ton of prep going into like the open rounds of the worlds, right? Because we were just coming off of seasonals. The new set came out. So I was doing a ton of prep with a lot of my friends who were also in, the top 64. Um, so that's how I landed on my lineup as it was. But then afterwards, it was a little bit harder to find test partners because, nobody else is testing, everyone else
Yeah.
is like, not very many other people qualified for worlds, right? So like finding test partners was a little bit difficult. But definitely tested a lot. Probably not as much as I should have. It would have been nice if I was aware of stuff like the Ping City deck coming out like that week or like Showfolk coming out that week. If I'd been a little bit further ahead of the meta. But yeah, I did a lot of testing and with how much testing I did before the open rounds, it was going to be really difficult for me to like get off of the 3 decks, especially after I had success with them, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So like I can't fault myself for not getting off of the 3 decks. But yeah, I ended up just running it back.
And then you lost in the first round to.
So I ended up getting out of my group, right? I ended up 2-0ing my first 2 rounds. I had
Oh, right.
clinched the first seed out of my group. So I kind of trolled a little bit in my third series. Maybe I shouldn't have, but
I
I made
remember
it
that.
as the
I
first
watched that.
seed. Yeah. And then I ended up playing against Yamato in the first round of the top 8. Which again, I was like super unfavored into his entire lineup once he banned Poppy Lulu. But he ended up playing really well. He drew really well. I didn't draw that well. But as much as I can complain, I ended up, finishing top 8, right? Which I was pretty proud of.
Top 8 of the first worlds ever in a game that you had played for like 6-ish months is like,
Yeah.
I take that.
It was
I would
okay, I
I
guess.
would take that to the bank. Made some decent money as well. The top 16 got to split $200,000, I think was the prize pool.
Something like that. I
Um,
yeah.
ish, give or take. If you could go back, do you know what you would have changed about your lineup, or was there anyone's lineup in the top 16 that you were like, oh, I wish I was on that?
I definitely shouldn't have brought Zoe Nami. I fucking hate that deck so much. It's just
It's a
it
weird
it
deck.
it swings back and forth, or at least it did, right? It swung back and forth between like the most broken thing that you could be doing, and then other times you just don't draw Nami.
You
And it's
just
like,
die.
oh, I guess I just lose now. And
Yeah.
like that was in the top 8. I just kind of like didn't draw Nami. It was one of those games where you're playing against your opponent and they get you down to like 2 health and they're about to finish you off, and then you top deck Nami on like turn fucking 9, and it's like, okay,
Great.
well,
Yeah.
that was that type of game.
Thanks, deck.
Um, I don't think that I would have brought Nami if I went back. Uh, but I don't know. I am not all that upset. Like there are a few cards that I would have changed around. Um, I think that there are some texts that I could have done in Draven Ezreal to be better into like Pink City and Ziggs Poppy that people were figuring out right then. I just hadn't had enough chance to play into those decks to be able to like find the texts. Um, but overall, like other than not playing Nami, I don't think that there's too many changes I would have made.
Yeah, fair enough. Um, Speaking of playing stuff that one of the things that I find very interesting about Runeterra is that uh I don't know if this is just me or if this is a lot of people. I feel like this is somewhat universal though. I think people really underestimate how difficult it is to play a lot of the decks. Even something like Sivir Action is I cannot play that deck for the life of me. Like you have to it looks on paper like a combo we could like aggro with a little bit of a combo element, like mid
Mhm.
rangey kind of just like deck that like beats face. But it's not really. It's like its own animal of like doing things and sequencings and like what's important. It's very different than like I don't know, like Ziggs Poppy, like an actual beatdown deck. Like it's like miles different. And like I definitely make the mistake of, or I did at least for a while, of just picking up decks and being like, I can play this. Even something like discard aggro is like that's very different than like pirates or Ziggs Poppy. Also, you're not just like guy. Like there's certain things that you need to mulligan in a certain way. You need to play certain matchups in a certain way. You need to know when you can like if you can afford to play around things or not, like what to set up and like when you can drop Jinx or when you have to go crowd. There's a lot of
Yeah.
things, a lot of factors. Um, and so getting back to like, preparing for tournaments and like a lot of the things that we say are like, play what you know. which I feel like is also somewhat fraught with peril because a lot of times people are like, well, what I know is like, tier 2 deck here and tier 2 deck there and like,
Yeah.
tier 1.5 deck over here. It's like, even if you play those perfectly, like you might also be in trouble. Um, but there's gotta be a sweet spot. And I think that a lot of people are just kind of picking up decks because they're good. And so I'm curious, like you just talked about, putting in so much work with those 3 decks that you brought to the open rounds and it being hard to get off them later on. Um, that's, that's very real because like because it takes so long to play a deck at a high level, it's like you're kind of like almost stuck
Yeah.
there.
I think that's something a lot of people don't like really acknowledge. It's just like how much matchup knowledge matters, especially in something like the mulligan. Something as innocuous as like the first 15 seconds in your game, deciding what cards to keep changes everything. It's huge.
Yeah.
You watch somebody like play a deck that you're really comfortable with, and you're like, why'd they keep that? Why'd they keep that? Why didn't they keep that? What are they doing? And it makes a huge difference. You're on like turn 6, and it's like, oh, I'm losing against darkness because they got their darkness up to 4. And it's like, yeah, you mulliganed your mystic shot. So they're fucking
Yeah.
3-2, got like 2 hits. A lot of things like that just are huge, and it's really difficult in this game. There's some decks that are a little bit easier, but to get to really a high level at any deck, I think is a lot harder than a lot of people give it credit for, right?
Totally agree.
So when you are building a lineup, like a lot of times, if you're getting ready for seasonals, y a lot of people say, you need like X number of days to get really good at a deck. I mean, the big thing is you should probably have your lineup locked in like a week ahead of time. Like
At
nobody actually
least.
does that, but you should. You definitely
Yeah.
should.
I mean, I've tried doing that, and still like a week is like, especially if you have to learn 3 decks.
Mhm.
That's insane. Like you almost need almost a week per deck. Like you need like multiple days for sure per deck. How many I don't know, but like even if it's 2 days, that's 6 days of prep that you need. That's already more than a week. Um,
Yeah.
so like
You were talking about like Sivir Auction, which when that first came out and that was first, like really big, I was like, oh, this is kind of a brain dead deck. You just, play your stuff out on curve and then you just win. And it's like,
yeah,
oh, actually, there's a lot of really in-depth lines here. It's this weird, like, half aggro, half value, half mid-range deck that, like, a lot of times figuring out exactly how you need to be playing and what you need to be doing. And, a lot of the lines can get really complex. And these are things that you aren't figuring out when, like your first 10 games. You're figuring it out on like game 80 or game 90,
mhm,
right? And, you
totally.
you have to, like, reach a hump to, like, realize how much you don't know about the deck because you just have, like, so much confidence until you play, like, 30 games, and you're like, "Oh, fuck, I'm actually, like, just completely missing this part." Until you realize you don't know it, you can't learn it, right?
Yeah.
Um,
That's what I
so
feel like.
yeah.
Like a lot of decks, like on the surface that there's something like that. So for instance, like what is it? Like for like tree, for instance, sometimes you have a poppy beatdown plan, sometimes you have a tree plan. Everyone kind of gets that, and like figuring it out from there is okay. But like you just said, action. Most people are go into it thinking like it just does this thing, but really it does like these multiple things, and you don't even know unless someone tells you or you figure it out after a bunch of games. And like that's the really deceptive part because I think every deck is really like that. Almost every deck, unless like, you know, the most basic aggro burn your face decks.
Yeah.
Other than that, like I was saying, even discard aggro has like very many different ways that it can be played and should be played depending on the
Yeah.
matchup.
I
So
I
yeah,
think that, like, a big example in the current meta is, like, Scion, right? Everyone wants to shit on Scion. You just play your shit out, you smack face, eventually you drop Scion, and he kills everyone, and you can do that. But, like, even I was playing it, last few days, and it's like, mulliganing is, like, kinda hard. Am I supposed to keep, like, Lost Soul in my opening? I don't fucking know. I haven't played enough games on it. Is this a matchup where I want Poro Cannon? I want to, like, try and whittle my opponent down? How important are Fearsomes in this matchup? Am I, like, relying on the Scion game plan? Is Sion gonna be, like, consistent and I'm good am I gonna do enough damage, or do I need to be, like, hard pushing my tempo? And it's really hard. It's not the type of thing that you can just pick up right away. Some decks are strong enough that they'll just carry you either way. But for the most part, to really get, like, the extra percentage points, it's really important to play a lot of games on a deck.
yeah, I find it so wild. I remember when I first started. Have you played a little bit of Magic, right?
Uh,
Um,
Not much, a little bit.
Okay, so I come from like competitive Magic, and when I came over, I thought that Runeterra was like dumbed down Magic. It was like okay, first strike's important, and like life steal's important and
Yeah.
overwhelm's important. And like, that's cute. It's a bunch of units, very basic, not a lot of like extra stuff to keep track of on the board and whatever. Now, though, now that I know better, like I can go back to Magic and a lot of times you only have like one or two options. Right? I can play this card, or I can play these two cards. What do I do? And then like you go to your next turn, you're like, I play that card, I can play that card. What do I
Mhm.
do? And then like you go to your next turn. It's much easier. Whereas with Runeterra, you just have a million options at like every point of the game for forever. And for like using a card or using resources at a time or not at a time easily spells winning or losing a game. And it's like that for like, a solid 10 plus minutes or whatever. And it's really fucking interesting. It's kind of wild. Like it doesn't make sense to me why having almost less options, or like less, like when it comes to like interacting with your opponent with like having to
Mhm.
pass priority back and forth, that like limitation makes for like a more skill intensive game, which is like really surprising. Cause I thought I was like, you only do one thing and then they do one thing and then you do one thing. Uh, but
Yeah.
that makes it, but then the planning is so much more important.
I think that like the two biggest things that LOR has going for it is, it's a dynamic turn system, so you are passing back and forth, but like passing is the most important thing, right? And then the second most important thing is that you can bank mana. Like, and just knowing when you need to bank, when you need to pass, how to pressure your opponent's mana without touching your own is just so massive. Played more Yu-Gi-Oh, right? And like in Yu-Gi-Oh, the only interaction you have during your opponent's turn is like sometimes you have like some trap cards, sometimes you have like some hand traps, but for the most part, there's not that much interaction. Um, so coming to a game like this where you're like constantly having to worry about your opponent playing cards back at you, it's so difficult, right? It's something that makes something like God, the decks that are really strong and really hard to deal with are decks that can kill you on your own turn, right? Like it's my turn. This should be when I'm safe. This should be when I'm able to just play out my cards. But having to worry about them playing cards back at you, whether it's burn, whether it's rallying, whether it's interacting with your board, it's just so difficult. Um, and like the passing and the banking of mana just multiplies every single option that you have by X. It's just so difficult. To be able to actually handle just all the different permutations, right?
Yeah. I definitely I sort of learn and play a lot of times by like process of elimination. And that's why it's like really difficult for me in Runeterra because there's like the decision trees just kind of like go on for forever. So it's like really important that I figure out what's important in the matchup, like we were talking about earlier. Because otherwise I'm just lost. I'm just like feeling it out, as I'm sure like most people are, just trying to like, get through the game. If you don't know what's important or what your plan is or what you should be trying to move towards. Um, and I think that's like why I struggle with some decks also is just because like I have no idea. I'm like not really sure what I'm supposed to be doing at any given time. Like you feel the difference, hey, like when you know your game plan inside and out, and you're like you can almost like play a deck while you're asleep. But yeah, I totally agree with the passing and the mana system. Like whoever came up with that, it's pure genius.
Yeah.
It's so good. When did that really like? When did you kind of figure that out? Was that early on that you like someone
God.
said something or you like watched it or did that take you a while to like wrap your head around?
So, like, I hit masters within like 2 weeks of playing the game, right? Within like 5 days of picking up TF
What
Fizz.
were you playing? TF
It's TF. So, like,
Okay.
before that, I was playing like Endure. I loved Endure. Endure was great. And then I like got hard stuck, and I'm like, okay, what's actually the best deck? Okay, everyone's talking about TFS. Let me play some TFS. And I still have the spreadsheet where I played like 75% win rate over like 90 games. It just went straight to fucking masters. And I was like, oh, this game's fucking easy,
So
right?
easy. I did the same thing, but I did it with like a fearsome stack. But like everyone it was at the end of the season, and
Uh-huh.
I just like went straight up to platinum or straight up to master. I was like, oh, this is super breezy.
Yeah.
This is like,
I
yeah,
thought
I'm
it
like,
was
I'm
easy
gonna be
as
the
shit.
king of
I
this
was like,
game.
yeah, I was like,
Yeah.
I already hit masters. I'm ready to like, when's the next season? Sign me up. I'm winning this
We're
shit.
taking over.
Yeah, but, after that, like, I think reaching masters is kind of like the first really big step, and then after that, you have to start really getting good at the game. You have to start understanding, like, the fundamentals of the game. I watched a lot of streamers, and every streamer's like, "Well, you kinda have to learn how to pass." I'm like, "Okay, yeah, I gotta learn how to pass. I know how to press spacebar, guys." But then you really have to start thinking about it. It's like, "Oh, I think God, I was watching some game where like somebody passed on deep into Draven Ezreal, and suddenly I'm like, oh, what do I fucking do now? I could try beam, I could like stun spider. He has units. He can play units, but he knows that by passing here, he puts so much pressure onto me to like play something first, and I'm fucked. And that sort of thing was like it really clicked to me. It's like, oh, this is like a real part of the game that you really need to understand before you'll ever actually be able to do anything. Um, that happened like a few months in, and then it took a long time to really be able to wrap my head around it. I think the big thing for me, like the big turning point, was one season. Every time I hit Masters before, it was like TFs or like discard or like spiders. I'm just playing like aggro-ish decks, right? I took one season, it's like, okay, I'm just gonna play Draven Ezreal. This is a deck that like requires you actually try and learn the game. You have to learn about tempo, you have to learn about resource management, stuff like that. And being able to like do that and like actually hit high masters with that deck just made a huge difference to me because suddenly I have to think about all my plays. I have to actually engage with the game instead of, just burn phase. And I think that was like a really big turning point.
Yeah, I had a similar experience with that deck as well. It's pretty good at like it's not as complex as some of the Targon decks that have a lot of burst speed
Mhm.
stuff. Like your things are more everything's slow speed, and so like, but you do end up passing to your opponent a lot, and you try to get them to commit to things a lot, and then you have that big tempo turn a lot of the times, and so it's like a good middle ground between like the decks you're describing before, like the spiders and stuff, and then like the Targon decks, like the Lee Sin, like stuff that's like even more complex. It's like right like that perfect like step up. It's sad that that deck's like got nerfed all the hell.
Yeah,
It was
I love Draven Ezreal. It's
me
absolutely
too.
my favorite deck. It's a combination of like control, mid-range, tempo. It's just kind of like in the middle of everything, and I think it teaches you a lot of like the fundamentals of the game. Sion
Really
doesn't
agree.
do that. Sion doesn't, as like the new PNC Noxus deck doesn't
Yeah.
teach you the same way. I don't even know what like maybe Swain, the new Swain decks. I haven't played them. I don't know. But that type of deck is, like, really what I enjoyed a lot, and it really bums me out that it got hard nerfed.
Yeah. I would love to see some of that stuff come back. Like, what would they even need to undo? Like
I think
Tribeam or
Tribeam to
Draven?
4 mana. So, like, the big thing about Tribeam going from 4 to 5 mana is at 4 mana, on turn 7, you could, Arachnoid Sentry, Tribeam. And that was a huge play that happened so often. That not being able to happen until turn 8 is huge because, like, turn 8, you kinda wanna just play Farron, right? You wanna play, like, real cards. Um, eh, Stuff coming out on turn 7 versus turn 8 is just, like, so huge, and, like, that turn, like, that big tempo swing turn just kinda got, like, hard nerfed. Um,
Yeah.
that and, like, Scion just needs to be removed because the Tri-Beam decks can't
That's
deal with
the big
Scion.
thing, right? Yeah. You
Yeah.
just fold to Scion decks. I think
Also,
the
like, Bama
Scion,
City has so many fucking chump blockers forever. You can
yeah.
never actually push damage on board. So you have to, like, lean into a burn plan. I don't know. They need to, like, nerf Mayor and, like, nerf Scion and, like, unnerf Tribeam, and then, like, maybe we could play Tribeam.
Yeah, I think those are likely to come. We'll talk about all of that real soon because the devs have reached out asking people what they want. We're gonna touch on that, but first, I want to get your thoughts on the current meta that we're in. I haven't had a chance to play like a lot. I've like, but I still like keep up to date on all the popular decks and stuff. It seems to me like the format is pretty open, despite there being some decks that are doing really well on the ladder. There is like a lot of decks that you could choose from that are climbing, that are doing relatively well. So I'm curious to get your thoughts on like where, like, kind of where we're at now. I guess like from the patch to now, like
Mhm.
what did you see then? Like what have you seen transpire until now? What are your thoughts of the meta now, and like where do you think it's headed?
So I think that, like, the big changes, like, since the beginning of the patch, everyone was on, like, Lurk and, like, um, shit like that, and, a
Dragons
lot
for a
of, like,
bit.
said Poppy, Dragons. Yeah. Dragons is nowhere to be seen, which is probably good, that deck. The deck does, like, some cute things, but it's just not that great right now. Um, Lurk has gone down a lot in presence, at least in, like, Masters. I think that, like, Diamond is still, like, incredibly Lurk heavy, but Masters especially has lost a lot of Lurk. Zolt, the big lurk player in Masters, isn't even playing it anymore. He's playing like Kinku Z elusive bullshit.
I
So like,
real quick, I really have always wanted to play one deck so much that I got to be known as like, oh, Jason, like the tree guy.
yeah.
Jason, the TLC guy. Like Jason,
Mhm.
I guess I was like, I was a Thresh Nasus guy for a little bit, like there was a lot of people that were Thresh Nasus people though. But I've always, or like how about Grandpa Roji? He's
Yeah, Roji, the Malphite guy.
the Malphite guy. Yeah, I've always wanted that, but I've always been like, if a deck's good, lots of people are gonna play it, and it's like rare that you get to just be like
It's
that guy.
because like I come from League, right? Like League is the game that I played for, several years at like an amateur level or whatever, right? So there, a lot of people are known for one tricking specific champions. Like, oh, that person is like the Tryndamere guy. That guy's the Camille guy. That guy's the Jax guy. That guy's the Lee Sin guy. Whatever. So the coming to a game like this, I also wanted to be like, oh, I wanna be known for that. It's a
Yeah,
way to get, like a certain amount of like name recognition, by just
totally.
like hard committing to a deck. Um,
And
but
I've
I
seen some of that. Like we just mentioned some ones. There's like,
yeah,
What Am I's the Targon guy, and
exactly.
Kever's the Lee Sin Zoe guy.
Covers the Liga, yeah.
I don't know.
I think
Bay is
for a
like
while,
the Targon guy, or
because I
the
was stubborn and like kept playing Draven Ezreal after the Draven Caitlyn came out, for like a little while, people were like, oh, he's the Draven Ezreal guy. It's like, well, now Draven Ezreal's gone. I'm not allowed to be that guy anymore.
yeah, it's just bad, right? You just can't be
Yeah.
played this bad deck for forever.
Yeah, it's kind of funny. It's a funny dynamic though, trying to chase after that. Uh, but as far as
Right,
like
dude.
current
Yeah.
meta,
Hmm.
Lurk is like kind of gone. I think people are realizing that like Scion's still like really fucking good. Um, Other than that, like Zed Poppy is like everywhere on ladder. It's a pretty strong deck. It's just very good at doing its own thing. And if you can't stop it, you are going to die. Um, Other than that, like Plunder is really huge on ladder right now. I think people remembered like, oh, this deck's pretty good. And it is like anytime that you're flipping Gangplank on like 5 or 6, you're probably winning the game. Other than
Yeah.
that, like Sivir Akshan, I think is still incredibly good. That's what I climbed a Masters with. Yeah, I think that's like normally where the meta's at. Um, Tonight I was climbing a bit with like the new Skathis Karina list control pile. Have you seen that? It's
No.
Shadow Isles P and Z. It's like 2 kindreds in it. Basically, the thing is you abuse the new Sentinel cards, the 1 mana and the 3 mana fearsome units that get bigger when you kill something.
Okay.
You abuse them to like push a ton of early damage. Then you just do a ton of removal until like you burn them out with like Mystic Shots or Atro or Ladros.
Huh.
It's kind of disgusting. Like it's kind of okay.
You actually thought it was good?
I went like 9-1 on stream with it. I'm up like near top 10 right now because of it.
Damn.
It's like okay. It's okay.
Not bad. It's not bad. Take it.
Yeah,
Take those.
you take it, a Kindred deck taking you that high is pretty you're happy with it.
Yeah. I mean, there's been a lot of like experimentation with stuff. There's been like the Shellfolk decks, like the new ones with
Oh, I love Shellfolk.
Lux and Poppy, which I thought had some legs. I felt like either it was missing a few cards or like the right build wasn't quite there yet, but because like it did some very powerful synergistic things. You could tell when a deck just like kind of comes together, and but it just felt like there was like 70% of a deck that was good and then 30% of a deck that was like this should be doing something
Yeah.
else. This should be a different deck.
Cephalopod's been like doing really well with that deck, and it looks interesting. It's one that I'm like, oh, I should try this out at some point, but I haven't gotten the chance. It feels like
You
it's
haven't tried it
2
yet? I'm
different
shocked.
decks. It
It,
feels like
it
it's like 2 different decks, right? There's like the top end like Lux Shellfolk value deck, and then there's like this Poppy aggro sometimes just tries to kill you deck.
yeah.
Um, so yeah, I've been on like Glorious Evolution Shellfolk, which I know that Majin just fucking hates.
Yeah.
That's another deck we were talking about, really needing mastery on it. It's the type of deck that you have to have a plan from turn 1. It's like the biggest thing you can do is like waste your trinket trade or like play Otter on turn 1. Playing Otter on turn 1 is like such a fuck up because, after you play out down your Glorious Evolution, each Otter is like 4 damage to your opponent's Nexus, in terms of buffing up your Poros. It's so huge.
Yeah.
And it's
So
the
I mean,
type of thing that you have to be planning
I
super
obviously
far.
know exactly what you were talking about, but
Oh,
for those
sorry.
listeners that can't see my eyes slanting back and forth, why don't
Uh-huh.
you explain what exactly we're talking about here?
So Glorious Evolution Shellfolk. If you remember the Shellfolk deck that Alan brought to Worlds, it was Ezreal, Vi, Shellfolk. It just tried to control the board, clear your stuff out, and then eventually it killed you with Ezreal with like burn, right? It was just
Yeah.
very much a value deck that you just run your opponent out of cards, and eventually they lose. But then a player named Enamour, who's also the same player with Darkodius that created like the Nami Zoe deck, like the whole double trouble thing. They were the ones to innovate that. Enamour decided to make Glorious Evolution Shelfo. Glorious Evolution, if you don't know, probably haven't seen the card very much. It's a 10 mana card that makes everything in your deck cost one less, and all of your units now have augment. So every time you play a card, they get buffed up. They become stronger. So the idea is that on turn 7, you play Glorious Evolution, you play Poro Cannon, play out a couple of Poros, and then you just buff them up without spending any mana. You're at 0 mana, and you like buff them up to like 10 attack and OTK your opponent.
How
So
do you
it's
buff
like,
them so high? It's just like free autopuses and like free
yeah.
ticket
So the big
trades.
thing is like you play down the 2 free Poros because they're 0 mana, and then you play like
Wait, how do you
Trinket
get the
Trade
poros?
from Poro Cannon.
Oh, okay.
So you Poro Cannon like, anything in your hand. Then you play them out. You play Trinket Trade, which is it's now a 0 mana card that creates a card in hand. So you create a free Otter, which you then play out, which attunes, so you gain a mana. And then
Right.
you play your free Prank, which also gives them more attack. And now you're suddenly allowed to play your 1 mana Pokestick or your 1 mana Time Trick to create more cards in your hand. So you just play out a ton of cards on exactly 0 mana and kill your opponent. So it's kind of like taking, this really slow Ezreal version that's, eventually burns your opponent out to like, no, I'm the aggressor. I am going to kill you on turn 7 if you don't have an answer for it. Um,
Okay, but we're talking about an answer for 2 1 toughness elusives.
so that's the thing. No, I agree with you. And in the early days, it was getting a lot of points because people weren't
Didn't know.
expecting it. They're like, oh, you have 0 mana, you can't kill me. Yes, I can. I am going to kill you. So one of the cute things that you can really do with it is that this deck, post Glorious Evolution, holds your opponent's mana hostage like no other deck in the game. Because it's 0 mana, I can kill you. So what I do is, you play out the Glorious Evolution, you play out a couple of Poros, and then you just pass. Maybe you take like 4 damage. Maybe you take like 6 damage. And your opponent has to decide to use their removal, right? And then I drop Shellfolk the next turn. And suddenly I'm hardcore outvaluing you. All my cards cost like 0 mana. You just do some really cute things and just play with your opponent's mana because the moment that they tap out, they will die. So it's
Okay.
a very difficult deck to play. You have to be really cute with the way that you approach it. You have to really mess with your opponent's mana and put a lot of pressure on them. But I think it's very strong. I think it's very good.
Interesting. Like when you're saying very good, give me some of the matchups then. Like what do you think it's good into? What do you think it's like 50-50? What do you think it's beating pretty hard?
I think it's impossible to lose into Targon because Targon can't kill you before you kill them. And like all their stuff costs really high.
What's Targon? I haven't heard of that in like 3 or 4 months. What is who?
So like when Dragons was out, we were like hardcore beating Dragons, but like all these Zoe Shellfolk piles, we hardcore crushed them. Zoe Lee Sin, they're on like 2-9 now, so it's a little bit hard, but if they ever drop back down to like 1-9, that's an incredibly favored matchup for us. With the change to Scion, where Scion no longer runs aloof, this is a favored matchup for us. We're favored into Lurk because we just killed them on turn 7. They have 0 interaction unless they have like double Pike Spell, which you're never beating double Pike Spell anyway, right? It's pretty good into Poppy Zed because you have a lot of removal. Um, Other than that, it's like 50-50-ish to like favored into most other stuff. It's like hardcore losing to like Sivir Akshan. It's like bad into like Plunder, but there's a lot of matchups that you can just like kind of high roll your way out of. You have a lot of removal. You can clutter up the board with like Conchologist and like Telescope early. Vi is, just good at removing stuff. And like you just outvalue a lot of your stuff. You don't have to go for the combo kill. You could still play just the Shellfolk deck, right? With just everything being free and all of your guys being really big.
And just burying them in card advantage.
Yeah,
If you were going to play seasonals tomorrow, would you bring it?
probably. I would probably be on like Sivir Akshan plus Shellfolk plus something else. I don't know what my third deck would be. Probably not Lee Sin. Because it's like Lee Sin means that you have to play into Scion. You're not allowed to ban Scion if you're playing Lee Sin because that's like his favorite matchup in the world. So like I couldn't bring Sivir Akshan and Lee Sin in the same lineup. Because Sivir Akshan is just like really bad into Scion. It's its only bad matchup.
Right. So, okay. Darn, I wanted to cover this earlier, but like
Very far.
when it comes to real quick looping back, when it comes to making lineups, um, do you take things like that into consideration a lot? Because, originally when at the beginning of seasonals, the kind of like general think was that that's how you wanted your decks to be. Like you wanted your bands to all kind of be the same. You wanted your good matchups to all kind of be the same. And it makes sense in theory for like the reason you were just describing. You don't
Mhm.
want a deck to be a good matchup for one of your decks and a terrible matchup for the other, because then you're stuck between leaving it and having, one good, one bad, or banning it and missing out on a good matchup. But in some recent seasons, the matchups have been kind of wonky, and like trying to make a lineup like that has been like almost too difficult. And a lot of the best lineups have just been like, play these three good decks, just ban one of the things that's bad for you, and just like get in there and roll the dice. Um, what do you kind of subscribe to when it comes to making your lineups? Are you almost always making decks that have like a similar matchup spread, or do you break that rule sometimes?
So I think that like going for a perfectly cohesive lineup, like all three of my decks have the exact same matchup tables. So we always want to ban the exact same thing and we're always going to be favored. It's a trap. You usually aren't going to be able to get like three good decks that all have good matchup tables. Um, so like it's a bit over exaggerated. You don't need to worry as much about having like perfect matchup tables. Um, but at the same time, you probably don't want to shoot yourself in the foot, right?
Yeah, you don't want it to be like polarized with like a deck's best matchup and a deck's worst matchup are the same
Yeah.
deck. That's like,
Like Sivir Auction is like really bad into Scion, but very good into Darkness. Lee Sin fucking hates Darkness, but is really good into Scion. So if I run into, like Darkness, well, they just banned Sivir Auction, and suddenly I'm like, I have to play Lee Sin into Darkness? I feel like I shot myself in the foot here. So like I
right.
think having like similar matchup tables is good. It doesn't have to be like one on one. Sometimes you can take like slightly negative matchups and like just high roll them, right? Or just like play it better than your opponent. And I think that that's a very reasonable way of going about it. Um, but yeah, just like don't super shoot yourself in the foot. But
Yeah.
otherwise, just play like three decks you're comfortable on and are like kind of good into most things.
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. Yeah. Like for instance, for anyone listening, all three of you, jokes. For instance, if there was like if there was one deck where you had that where it was good for one and bad for one deck, like maybe you can get away with it. Maybe that deck's not super popular. It could be. Or maybe you're planning on just banning it and like that's not that big of a deal because everything else kind of lines up nicely. So like, there's some exceptions where it's like, okay, it's fine. But then it's when like there's multiple decks that are like, good or bad for multiple of your decks. Then it's like you get into those situations where no matter what you do, you're kind of gonna be screwed. Like there's too many of the decks, you're always gonna run into them. You can't ban them all. Like then you're in a really bad spot. And you see that happen all the time. People make lineups like that. I had think that I was guilty of that like in my first seasonals when I had no idea what I was doing. Quite the art to it though. Hey, of putting together a cohesive lineup. Like not only do you have to learn decks inside and out, which is extremely difficult. Playing them is extremely difficult. But then you have to like make a lineup and make a band strategy that makes a lot of sense, which is almost like something unto itself. Do you think we're going to see like more development in that area? Because the game's like just keeps getting deeper. Have you noticed since you started playing to like today? Like I played in the first seasonals and it was like Wild Wild West. Like it was like Gauntlet. It was, people just put their pet decks, like whatever. There was just like anything and everything went. And it's gotten tighter and tighter and tighter and tighter to the point where like last seasonals, I don't think I saw like, I think one person out of 9 rounds had like some little bit of rogue decks. Everything else was like top 3, 4, 5 decks on the ladder, basically.
Yeah, I think that like a couple things. Like on one hand, everyone has gotten much better at this game, right?
Yeah.
Like you can see it in like the Masters climb for a lot of people this season has been so much harder than in any previous season. A lot of people are playing really good decks and are playing a lot better. So to be able to like get to the top of the ladder at the beginning of the season is very difficult. Very difficult. But like a lot of the theory on like building a lineup has changed in the last couple months even. People have kind of decided it's not as big a deal if you have, perfectly cohesive matchup tables, right? Or, all of my decks want to ban the exact same thing. So yeah, I think that this will definitely keep evolving. We might decide, in 3 months that we're just approaching lineup selection completely incorrectly. But yeah, even
Those are
for
good
making like
chance.
seasonals.
Actually, like if you look back at any game ever, poker, magic, chess, football, basketball, baseball, any game, you look back at the early days and it's like, what were
What are
they
they
doing?
thinking?
What were they thinking?
Yeah.
MMA, there was a guy fighting with like one glove and one bare hand. Like what? Just on and on it goes. Just like, in every single game, it's like hilarious. And so for sure, like, last year, especially, we're already look back at last year and they're like, oh man, what were we thinking? So for sure, like in another year or 2 years or 3 years, we'll be looking back and being like, how are we possibly, doing those things? Which is
Yeah,
something
like
good to
how are
keep in
we so
mind.
bad?
Yeah, like you should be questioning everything that you're doing, because a lot of the things you take as like sacred cows or what's the saying? Sacred,
Texts.
sacred texts. Sure.
Or
Um,
sacred.
I was going for like there are no sacred cows. Is that what it is? I don't know. Whatever. I'm gonna move on. Basically, don't always nothing is like a sacred text, like written in stone. You should always be
Yeah.
questioning the theory and the fundamentals and everything you're doing kind of all the time to try to improve.
I mean,
Uh,
I think that I come from like League, right? So, a lot of people talk about like if you took like a gold player playing in League today, which is, like, I don't know, like 50th percentile of the fucking player base, and you
yeah,
set them back like 6 years, they'd be the best fucking player in the world, and it's not even close, right?
really, hey?
Just because of how much the game has improved or how much people have improved at the game since then, right? And I think that games like this, we're going to keep improving, like just from a strategy basis. So even Alan, right? Alan won Worlds. He brought Showfolk to Worlds. He came out and said, Showfolk hard crushes Sivir Akshan. This is like a 70-30 matchup. It's unlosable, right? And if you play Sivir Akshan into Showfolk today, or like you try and say, like, yeah, I could beat Sivir Akshan with Showfolk. No, you can't. That is not an okay matchup. It is not a playable matchup, right?
I mean, that deck was like ended up not being good, even right. Like it got
I think it
dropped
was
pretty
like I think
fast
it was like
after
fine.
Worlds. It was
But
fine, but like it wasn't like oh he broke the format. Oh, like he found GF bids. No, it's like they got banned a lot, and like people didn't know how to
yeah,
play against it. He ran pretty hot when he had it, but like the deck didn't go rip up the ladder. It wasn't just like oh a shell folk everywhere after that. It was like it was like it was fine. It was a deck.
it was
It's like
fine.
not like
Sion's
the
still like
format.
really
The
good.
format's
It's
only
like,
gotten better for it. I'm pretty sure since the nerfs, right? Like Nami's gone. Like the format's just gotten
Navi was a
better. I
good
think.
matchup for it. It was Sion that was like,
Oh,
see,
was
and
it?
that's another one. Like people were like, this beats Sion. No, it doesn't. If Sion's running Aloof, it does not. See, now Aloof doesn't exist, so like it can beat Sion, but
Hmm.
I think that the meta evolves and our understanding of the meta and our understanding of matchups and our understanding of decks evolves rapidly, right? We're building better decks every day. We're playing these decks better every day. Um, so yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if in a few months we look back and it's like, what the fuck were we doing? I can't imagine in like a year and a half, just our understanding of the game just is wholly incomplete.
Yeah. I mean, even though, and I'm not trying to poo on Alan or his deck decision or anything like that. Love Alan, long time. I got coaching from him when I first started the game. He was the one that opened my eyes to passing more. We were playing like Fresriel, and he's like, "What do you do here?" I'm like, "Play a thing." He's like, "No, say go." I'm like, "What do you do this turn?" I'm like, "Play a thing." He's like, "No, say go." I'm like, "What do you do this turn?" I'm like, "Play a thing." He's like, "No, stop trying to play things. Just pass to them. They have to kill you." I'm like, "Oh, okay, sorry." Like my mind exploded. Love him, but what I want to talk about though is um the like no one was ready for the deck, right? Like people like didn't really have reps in against it, and so a lot of people ended up just banning it, which left his two other decks that were probably more powerful available to be played. What do you think of like going super rogue like that? Like that's kind of been one of my strategy of just throwing curveballs at people, and you do get a pretty big edge if people have no idea what's going on in a matchup. Like we were just talking about, if you don't have a plan or you don't know what's important in the matchup, like you do have a pretty big edge. The downside of that being that you are playing God knows what that was thrown together by like what am I, which like man, I've played some of his stinkers, and let me tell you, no one's winning with some of those decks. But
Yeah.
there's definitely a sweet spot there.
And even on the other side of the bracket at Worlds, right? Like on my side of the bracket was Shihu, and Shihu brought like Zoe Heimerdinger and like FTR. I don't remember what
Yep.
his third deck was, but I was looking at that because I was doing prep before that. I knew he was on my quadrant, and I'm like, I don't know what the fuck the matchup tables look like for this. And like
Mhm.
nobody that I'm testing with has played this deck before. So like they can't, like tell me. If they try it,
Yeah.
they're playing it at a much lower level than she who will. So it's like, oh fuck, I might as well just ban it, I guess. Um, and I think that there is some merit to that. But you have to know what you're getting into when you're playing like a super rogue deck because on one hand, there's no other resources of other people playing this deck to help you out.
Yeah.
You are on your own. You need to figure these out yourself, right? You have to be Grandpa Roji going out there playing 250 games of Malphite and losing before you figure out like the build that actually lets you win sometimes, right?
Yeah.
Is it worth the extra edge? You have to do a lot more work for it. It can be. It absolutely can be.
We have
But
seen a lot of like the seasonals and now worlds have been won by very rogue strategies by people going
Duckling
like
was playing like
duckling,
TFT's
way
post nerf. He was playing Cythria and like
Cithria combo. Nobody that deck was
yeah,
on anyone's radar.
and then like Timo Ezra was his third deck, right? Like he was playing some off the wall shit and like did really well with it.
Mo played triple aggro at a time when triple aggro was okay, but those definitely were not the top decks like on the ladder or considered to be the best deck.
I got second at the seasonals playing Timo Ezreal and Soraka Top Kench. And I just like made the meta call and it's like I'm gonna beat Kevor's lineup. And I beat Kevor's lineup. But
Nice. Poor
yeah.
cover. Rip. Did you find that people were making mistakes or playing maybe suboptimally against you because they weren't as familiar with the matchup, or did you not notice that so much?
I think they definitely do. I think that it's hard for a lot of people. There I don't think that you realize until you get into a matchup that you're not familiar with, the difference between being very comfortable and very uncomfortable in a matchup, right? Like, specific matchups like Sivir Akshan into, Nami Zoe. I had played that, 50 times. I played that 100 times. I was very familiar. But if you play Sivir Akshan into like some random shit, you're like, am I the
Uh,
aggro deck here? Am I supposed to beat down? Am I supposed to, do this, do that? If I pass here, are they just ahead now? These are the types of things that like the other person will know and you just won't. And like sometimes it doesn't matter, but they can matter. That edge can matter.
yeah. You know what? Instead of saying like how many days or weeks you need for a deck to know a deck, how many games do you think it takes, like to know a matchup or to know like a deck well into a meta? Like we're
I think you
talking
could
hundreds, right?
I think you could probably like learn a matchup and like if you're like really focusing and like really working on improving, maybe like 15 or 20 reps on like a specific matchup, maybe. On like ladder, it probably takes a lot more than that, right? And I probably wouldn't feel super comfortable on a deck without playing at least, 80, 100 games on it. You know,
Yeah,
it's hard. It
that's
takes
a
a lot of
lot.
time.
That is a lot of games.
It
That is a
is.
significant amount of games. Like we're talking like minimum 100 per deck. You still have
And it
three
depends
decks.
on like the complexity of the deck,
Yeah,
especially combo in this game. Like Lee Sin, you probably need a lot of games. The Glorious Evolution Shelfo, that deck's incredibly difficult. I've given it to other streamers and other incredibly good players, and you watch them play, and it's like, you're playing this so wrong. You have to play like 40 more games before you'll be able to figure this out. It's just very, difficult decks just multiplayer, right? So if you're somebody who doesn't have a ton of time, sometimes simpler is easier. Simple
mm,
doesn't have to be wrong. You could just play decks that are pretty, you know, solved or like, decks that, you can look at other resources on, or, you could just play these matchups and people have written up, how to win the matchups. That could be very helpful. Or just
yeah,
stick with decks that you're super comfortable on, decks that you have already played, 100 games on, even if they're a little bit weaker. Draven Ezreal this last seasonal was bad. I took it. I went 7-2, right? Like if I had the tiebreakers, I would have top cut, but I didn't have the tiebreakers. But you can take
feel
like
that.
decks that aren't as good and still do very well with if you're comfortable with them.
Yeah, totally. And that's that's why a lot of the top advice is to like play what you know. Okay. Last but certainly not least, today the devs went on Reddit and a couple of them, I would name drop them if I remember their names, my bad. On Reddit and Twitter and reached out to the community and were like, hey, we are working on the patch, the big patch for January. Talk to us. What do you guys want to see? Which I think is freaking awesome. But shout out real quick. I tweeted back and was like, this is great. I love the devs do this. Big thumbs up. But can we please get the people behind organized play and the producers of the game, which I think are the ones that decide on like best 3 ladder, to come do this. Because like, what the heck? All we get the devs all day, every day. They come on the podcast. Shout out Ruben. They go on Reddit, they go on Twitter, they stream. Shout out Ruben. But like, where's everyone else? I want organized play, and I want the people that are responsible for the different game modes that we get. I will say though that surprising or hopeful amount of Riot employees liked my tweet, which doesn't normally happen. So I'm like,
Oh yeah.
maybe that's in the works. I got to feel like that's coming at some point. Because one, I think they don't actually have or didn't have anyone specifically on organized play for Runeterra. I think they were just they had it as responsibilities of people that were in other camps, TFT,
Yeah.
Valorant, League, or whatever. So that'd be cool. But anyways, here's hoping. Let's talk about this. One, I think it's fantastic they're doing it. That's so cool. I'm like really excited about it. Two, what would you like to see? What would you like to change or see change come January? I mean,
So
we still have more cards coming also, but let's say it was let's ignore the new cards. Let's just say that was happening, I don't know, in December instead of the new cards.
So like I replied to it, and like the things that I said was Sion needs to not come down leveled on turn 7.
Yeah.
He needs to come it's okay if he's leveled on like 9, but on 7 it's just ridiculous, and he just
Gotta work
is
a little
too
bit hard.
consistent.
Yeah.
Yeah, at least. And then I said Tri-beam to 4 mana, please, and Eye of the Dragon to 1 mana. Those are the changes
saw
that
that.
I wanted.
I saw.
Um,
Did you take a tune away from it?
I did, yeah. I was like 1/2, 1 mana. You know, a lot of people say like a 1/3, 1 mana, no attune, but I don't know. You're buffing it, right?
I thought you. Okay, so I thought you wanted it to be a 1/3. I think 1/3.
I think 1/3 is fine.
I don't love as a 1/3 because it just stonewalls 2 1s.
Yeah,
For
for
what?
sure. So like I would prefer a 1/2. But at the same time, like the big thing is I don't want to take away power from the card. I just need it to not get searched by Crescendum.
Yeah.
Crescendum's too fucking
What if you just keep
Running
it
6
as is
copies
and
is
make
not
it
okay.
3?
Make it like 3 mana.
Make it 3 mana.
Um,
It's
I
so
think it'd be
damn
bad.
good. I think
I
it still sees play. It's so good.
Maybe?
Like it's
I don't know.
so
I think
good.
it'd be bad.
I'm trying
So
to
like the other thing
other
is like
cards that went
Ionia,
from 2 to 3.
Ionia doesn't have good 1-drops, right? Like what are the Ionia 1-drops? There's like the 1/1 that like buffs itself.
Cards
There's
say
the droplet. Name
poor
another
Dro- my
Ionia
poor-
1-drop.
my poor droplet.
Yeah. So like I
Okay.
don't mind it being a good 1-drop for Ionia. I just need you to not be able to run 6 copies of it in your Lee Sin deck. That's it.
Yes, I totally agree. That's if anything, maybe we should have gotten rid of that moon weapon instead because it keeps
Maybe-
you just can't create good 2-drops.
It's Pandora's box. Like Gifts from the Beyond being like a very specific search card, a very specific tutor from your deck. Even if it like brought it to your hand, maybe that'd be better. But it brings it out onto the field, and it's so abusable, right? Like how many different cards have been abused by this? You know, Boxtopus was huge for how long, right? It took a very significant nerf to Aphelios, and like the interaction is still there. It's still waiting under the surface for the next deck to
It's
abuse.
waiting to be the best thing. Yeah.
Yeah. So like Crescendum's kind of like an inherently broken card that definitely limits design space. But at the same time, it's a really fucking cool card, so I like it being in the game. You know, I like bringing out my Cheerian Sump Worker, but it shouldn't be able to bring out, you know, the Eye of the Dragon or Boxtopus.
Yeah. What do you think Lee would look like right now if it had to play old Lee? Because it doesn't have Sparklefly anymore, so it would be pretty bad.
I forgot Sparklefly. So quickly, I have forgotten Sparklefly.
Yeah.
Since it went to 3 mana, it's not a card anymore. I mean, so like Priestess got buffed. Priestess
True.
is like super good. You know, you're probably back on like, I guess you don't run Mentor, do you? Because like you can't Mentor Sparklefly. That's not a curve anymore.
No. You
just
you
run,
mentor
like,
your
goats?
You mentor your goat. It's fine. Goat just gets
Yeah.
there. See his
You
play
can get, like,
mentor.
cards. You have like Telescope. Telescope's a really good card. You know, maybe you actually run the 4/2 with Lifesteal, the Fey Folk, just to try and get you through. Just to
what-
try and get you through
You know
aggravation.
what I think? You know what I think they may be doing rather than us trying to make these cards fair. I think you just make them horribly unfair. Or just not horribly, but you just like whatever. Just like we'll make it a 1 mana, 1/3, no attune. That's it. That's what it is now. Go. And then in 2 months, like there'll be cards in a month. And then in 2 months later, or even like, you know what you do? You do a huge patch. And then like the next month when new cards come out, if anything's just too bonkers, you're like, okay, we put that one back. Like that one, sorry. That one goes back. And then the next month, you're just like, just a bunch of changes again. Just everything. Magical Christmas land. You get a change, and you get a change, and you get a change. And then just like the next month, because it'll take people a while to figure everything out, right? Like it's going to take with a whole bunch of changes, and yeah, just a whole bunch of changes. It'll take a while. And so by the time they're like, "Oh, this is like we found the thing," it's like it's too much, and we're tired of it now. You'll get new cards, and they'll get rid of that thing. I think that's what they need to be doing.
I think
Frankly,
one issue with like, accepting that like these really strong cards are going to be really strong, like even if we're nerfing eye, like we're really just making it like, like the best one drop in the game. The issue is that a lot of the other cards that aren't very good, like the cards that you haven't seen in forever, the champions that you haven't seen in forever just become that much worse. So like it would need to be coupled with like really big across the board buffs, right?
yes.
Hopefully it would.
Yeah, and I think it should be like a changing of the guard. Like bring back Fiora. I don't know, make
No,
Arma
Fiora can stay
good.
dead. Come
Yeah,
on.
you know, like Fiora. I don't know, Azir. Like whatever it is, or the ones that really haven't seen play even.
Yeah.
But like the stuff that has been like tier 1 for forever, like Lee Sin Zoe, I'm even tired of. Like that was my go-to deck. I loved it. But like get it out for a while, bring other stuff back, and then in like 6 months, like swap back around and like, have different things being buffed or being nerfed at different times, which allows for like this diversity. But whatever they do, just more. Cause like the last patch seemed like it was a lot, but like the meta's
Not
like,
that much was changed, right? Like some stuff was brought down, but like as far as like impactful buffs, some people run Vanguard Sergeant now. Can anything else change?
yeah, all those dragon cards looked like they were going to be a big game changer.
Oh yeah,
Even
Dragon's
all
Clutch.
those additions, Dragon's Clutch, the 3/4 for 3. That is that the Vanguard, that like double
The Dragon
Fury
Guard
stuff.
whatever.
Yeah, both of them, but both of the 3 mana Demacia ones looked really good.
Yeah.
Um,
And like they're okay. It's just Dragons kind of sucks. It just kind of
just
gets run over.
Poppy's too damn good, and Scion's too damn good.
Do you remember when like Dragons was like really fucking good for like a season?
Yeah.
And then suddenly the game is sped up to like such a degree
Yes.
that it's hard. It's hard until you like take a step back and be like, wow, pre-Zero Irelia, this game was a lot slower.
Oh, I mean, outside of Poppy though, what else goes really fast? I guess Scion.
So like every single Poppy deck in the fucking game.
If you take out
right?
Poppy and Scion just out of the format, those cards don't exist. I think the format's a lot slower.
Plunder with like flipping Gangplank on like 5, the Make It Rain buff is like kind of huge, I think. I think
Yeah,
that they're
it's pretty good.
so I want to take like decks like Pirates, right? Remember when Pirates was like kind of scary? Pirates gets raced by like fucking everything right now. Pirates is
Yeah.
like a bad aggro deck. And like it was
Yeah.
always kind of bad, but discard aggro. You remember when Jinx was like really fucking scary? And like they just go super wide and they kill you on like turn 4? Why isn't that getting played?
Well,
we're
Rummage.
running better
Rummage got
decks
buffed.
now.
Or nerfed. Rummage went to 2 mana. That was a pretty big one.
It didn't matter as much, I don't think, to that deck. I think
Yeah.
kind
Was
of
there
mattered.
something else? Was there another one? But yeah. Yeah, the deck
Scion
not
came
as
out.
good.
Scion's just stronger things. You're
And I
just
mean
doing stronger things.
Poppy Ziggs is just like better pirates.
Poppy Ziggs just like fucking owns. Poppy Ziggs is like the burn deck. It will
Yeah.
fucking kill you. There's nothing
it's
you can
real
do
good
about
at what
it.
it
You have
does.
to have answers on every single turn on curve or you will die.
Yeah. So I mean, like, I think the format would have been a lot better currently if something out of Lee Sin, Scion, and Poppy had all got touched. And then also probably some more things got buffed.
Maybe this is a hot take. I don't think Poppy needs to get nerfed. I think Mayor. If we say fuck Mayor, I think Poppy should be really strong and like Poppy Zed. I think Poppy Zed should be a really strong deck. I think Twin's a little bit too OP, but like I think Poppy should be strong in that shell. I think that Poppy being thrown in like
so
every
good.
Mayor deck is fucking stupid.
What do you think of Poppy's
Just go
at 3/3?
wide, Weasley. So 3/3. I don't think Poppy's attack ever matters. I think it's only her health that matters.
Yeah, so that's what I'm
You
saying.
could make Poppy a fucking 1/3. I mean, not literally a 1/3, but as long as she's still buffing her teammates, it doesn't matter.
Yeah. So that's what I'm saying. I think she would still be really good as a 3/3. So why
Yeah.
not start there?
I think the issue is twin disciplines and Mayor. I think Mayor helps you go wide like too easily.
Twin's
Two,
kind of
three.
annoying. I'm like,
Twin's so fucking
I'm a little over twin.
insane. Three is so 3 for 2 mana. There's like a curve in this game where like if someone has 2 mana, you can expect them to do about 2 damage. If they have
Yeah.
3 mana, you can expect them to do about 3 damage. If I'm spending like 3 or 4 mana, if I'm like 5 or 4 damage thermoing your Zed and you just twin it, I just fucking lose the game. It's
Yeah.
insane. Like twin is just so good and so versatile, right? You can push for lethal with it, or it's just protection. A lot of times in those decks, it's just protection. It's so good. So good.
Yeah. I think it needs to go back or go to 2. Go +0, +2, +2, +0.
It's probably bad then. Do
It might be.
you make it like +1, +2? But that like kind of defeats the purpose of the deck or of the card. I don't know. It's
+1,
hard.
+2 or +2, +1.
Maybe.
See.
I don't know. I don't know like how impactful the choice would be. I just think the twin as it is just kind of like warps the power of that deck. Then again, the best deck in the game against that deck was Draven Ezreal, and Draven Ezreal's fucking unplayable. So like maybe if we buff that back up, we can, start shitting on these Poppy players.
Yeah, see, that's the thing. Like, I feel like people are always like, oh, like this, like you really don't know how things are going to get changed around. Cause like, well, like one like new card even, or like one buffed card, like a twin disciplines, like all of a sudden just all these other decks become viable and they push all these other decks down and like the whole thing gets moved around so much. And there's just too many moving pieces. So that's why I think instead you just make a bunch of changes. So at least no matter what, it's fresh and exciting and new, and it's something for us to figure out. And then as soon as we do, you make a bunch of changes again.
Potentially, yeah. I think that there's like a curve that you have
If you're
to ride.
doing it every,
Like,
if you're doing it every
swapped.
months, right? Like every like 2 months is a good amount of time, or maybe just best of 3. Maybe that's just what we need.
Yeah,
And then we don't have to
maybe.
try and make best of 1 freaking fun anymore, because like lots of times best of 3 is awesome and best of 1's a snore fest until we just switch it all up. And we would not need to do that if we could just play best of 3. I think that'd probably go a long way.
The option to ban Scion, and I'll quit bitching about Scion. Until then,
Right?
yeah.
Right. Okay, well, that has been well over an hour for us. So I think we'll wrap it up here. Aikado, thank you so much for coming on the show. Props to you for filling in for Major Slops and Majin Bay. Good luck, Bay, by the way, on this tournament. If anyone is watching or interested in Flesh and Blood, he's playing in the Orlando Grand Prix calling thing. There will be coverage of it, I believe. So go check that out. Aikado, where can people find you?
On Twitch, I stream like most evenings, twitch.tv/xikado, because for some reason the original Aikado got taken. That's okay. Or on Twitter, Aikado LOR. Yeah.
Or in our Discord. Go check that out.
Or in our Discord. True. Yeah, my DMs are open.
Yeah. All right. That's it for us, guys. Have a great weekend. Remember, Wednesday night Runeterra is a thing. Come hang out, play some tournaments with us on Wednesdays. And as always, keep a winning mindset and you cannot lose. Peace.